Welcome back to another episode of The Hardcore Casual with your boy, Bass the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, an associate, a colleague, a relative, enemy, anyone in between. All views are appreciated, all comments are appreciated. Now, I had a few topics to talk about from, say, things that took place Monday to kind of Wednesday. I wanted to sort of space things out, so I figured why not speak about some of that stuff right now. There's a couple that actually I'm going to conflate into one individual segment because there's a few things that kind of do overlap, but outside of that, yeah, just wanted to kind of give my take on a few things, see what you guys think, and yeah, let's get it cracking. So without further ado, let's get into it. So in a recent interview, Eddie Hearn had said that he was potentially looking to make the Deontay Wilder versus Andy Ruiz fight on probably one of their, the Abu Dhabi cards that they have for the Champion Series that he does with, I think it's Skills Challenge over there. Now, the one thing I thought was a bit weird about mentioning that, obviously, because Deontay Wilder the other day said ultimately that he's still with PBC, but he's an open agent. A lot of people have said free agent, but no, he said open agent, which to me means very specifically, I'm not necessarily free of my obligations as such. I'm not free. I can't just go where I want, but I can listen to offers. And then if I can listen to those offers, my team or whoever is advising me can then either say, you can take this one, or maybe that one don't work, but we can get you something additional, or you have to ask for this for us to allow you to be able to move how you want to move, aka Al Heyman. A lot of people said free agent, but he didn't say the word free. And while he can be, a bit unintelligent with some of the words he uses at times, using the incorrect vernacular, if we want to put it like that, I think that was specific to say I'm open to listening to all deals, but ultimately, like, if the team say that it's not the right one, then it's not the right one. But Eddie Hearn said he's willing to work with Deontay Wilder. Now, if Deontay Wilder's willing to work with Eddie, he said that he would, he'd be open to working with anyone for the right deals. So we'll see. But it's just a bit weird that Eddie Hearn ultimately would be looking to work with Deontay Wilder to put on an Andy Ruiz fight, when someone that he actually co-promotes has been put into a purse bid situation with Andy Ruiz for a final title eliminator, or for an interim title. Now with Andy, I'm wondering, well, to him, what would he want more? Would he want an interim world championship with the IBF, which guarantees that he either fights the champion or becomes champion? Or do you want the Deontay Wilder fight for a final eliminator spot, which doesn't actually guarantee you a championship at the end of it? You get to fight for the championship as the final eliminator, but there's no guarantee when the mandatory will be called, and you don't know who necessarily you would fight at the end. Like, you could fight Tyson Fury, or Tyson Fury could vacate and then you have to fight someone else, and there's no guarantee that you win that. Whereas this one, you're guaranteed a championship if everything falls the way it's supposed to within one fight, because you would be the champion in your next fight regardless, or at least fight for the belt. So then who would, so do you want to go the WBC route and fight the 6'9" guy, or do you go the IBF route and potentially fight the guy that's 6'3", similar dimensions to you, height and reach and whatnot, but obviously just much better feet or more awkward angles, etc. So it's a bit weird to me that Eddie Hearn would necessarily favor that as his. Obviously, I know that one itself would make more money as such, but what about doing right by the guy that you actually work with? That, so what's he meant to do in the interim, or who's he supposed to fight for that interim title? unless it's a case of trying to run it back with Michael Hunter again and having that for the vacant title. But he's not in the rankings anymore after rejecting the previous eliminator. So I don't know, weird one. But in that same interview, or in an interview I think of maybe a day after, he said something else that was very peculiar. So he said they're potentially looking to do the Artur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol fight in and around June, and they've had preliminary talks about it. But he's also said, that may potentially be too soon for Beterbiev because it's not that long after Ramadan. Now Ramadan itself finishes, I believe, on the 22nd of April. So you've got 6 weeks there. 6 to 7 weeks you would basically have after Ramadan. So you would assume that you would maybe do late night training for that period of time, eat, recuperate, maybe, taper down, start and do 1 or 2 sessions in that period of those 4 weeks, and then ramp up for like 5 weeks, taper off for the last 2, because he's obviously, he shouldn't be that oversized. But I can understand him saying it might be too soon for him. But then Eddie Hearn said potentially if Dmitry Bivol couldn't do that fight, then there's obviously the Joshua Buatsi fight for him, and then Artur Beterbiev can go into his mandatory challenge with Callum Smith, and we could potentially do both of them on the same card. But if the same card is the Abu Dhabi card, this Champion Series card, if you can get Artur Beterbiev on that card to face Callum Smith, why not put him on that card to face Dmitry Bivol? It makes absolutely no sense. You have the two of them on the exact same card fighting different people, especially if what you said is the reason that would be is because he may not be ready for Bivol because Ramadan obviously finishes towards the end of April. But if that's the case, he wouldn't be able to be on that card in the first place. And if he can make that card, he can make Undisputed. Because make no mistake, him fighting Callum Smith does nothing for him at this point. When Undisputed is there and to be made, you don't put other roadblocks and hurdles in front of it. Callum Smith is going to be fine. You could even put him on that card to keep busy against another person, get him another payday, make sure he's taken care of. As soon as that fight's over, he fights the winner or he fights for a vacant belt. If that person decides that they don't want to take that fight in November or December or January, February next year, or whenever they choose to fight again. To me, that whole statement just seemed like, and I can call out Eddie Hearn on BS just like anyone else. It sounds like fraudulence. It sounds like trying to, play to the public ear, hearing that, oh yeah, both of them can be on the same card. There's absolutely no reason for both of them to be on the same card. Because if Artur Beterbiev can get himself into condition to fight Callum Smith as his mandatory on the same card that Dmitry Bivol would potentially fight Joshua Buatsi, then he can get himself into position to fight Bivol. And even if he says, well, maybe I can't be 100%, I would much rather be 90 or 85% fighting for Undisputed for the one belt that I don't have, than fighting this guy who could be dangerous, who, could maybe catch you and damage you or cut you, and now you've got to take more time out, and then you don't get to fight Bivol until you're 39 or even towards the back end of 2024 pushing 40. To me, that makes absolutely no sense. And yeah, that to me is just sort of what they call grandstanding and, just grandiose misdirection from Eddie Hearn. And again, I quite happily call that BS where I see it. That's bullshit. So Eddie, if you want to get both of them on the same card, or you're trying to push that narrative, don't get both of them on the same card. Put the two of them together. Because you also said that, all right, Dmitry Bivol goes out in June, and then you still want him to fight in May to fight Canelo. Well, that's a 3-month turnaround. So why can't you, if you can give him those 10 to 11 weeks, which would probably be what he would have at a push. If he can have that in 10 weeks, then there's no reason why you can't also do the same thing for Arthur better be. So please, stop the bullshit, stop the foolishness, stop the what they call it, the wave of hand delusions. Get the fight on. That's the fight we want to see. We want to see Undisputed. Make it happen. Now, usually I don't talk about subjects that I haven't got first-hand knowledge of, but on this occasion, as I got some of the sound bites and some of the quotes, I kind of just want to give my take on the situation whereby Josh Taylor, I think he'd done an interview with Gareth A. Davis for Talk Sport, whereby he's essentially said that the reason the Jack Catterall fight isn't happening is due to Ben Shalom's incompetence, and essentially it's a Sky Sports issue as to why the fight didn't take place, and it's not his fault. So from what I remember seeing, basically what he said was, so initially at the end of last year, he obviously got married. He got married sort of around summertime. He had to vacate a couple of his belts so he didn't have to do mandatories, as he wanted the Jack Catterall fight to be next or something along those lines. Now in that particular instance, I already call bullshit on that. If you had to give up one of the belts due to marriage and getting married and all that, cool, I understand that. But you had 3 belts and you gave up 3 belts. There's absolutely no reason you couldn't have done one of your mandatories and then fought Jack Catterall afterwards to keep 2 of the belts. Or you maybe even could have done 2 and had kept 2 of the belts and got rid of 1. But I'm going to assume you would have only had 1 fight that year because obviously married, whatever. So cool. Could have kept that. And then you still would have been able to do the rematch. So it didn't have to be the immediate. But either way, so you got rid of the belts, doing the rematch. Now, from what I think he said was that there was initially talks to do it towards the back end of 2022. That then got pushed out because someone wouldn't have been ready in time. I think that's what was said, or he wouldn't have been ready. Then they had a January date initially, which got pushed to February. And then from February, the February date got moved to April because of the Liam Smith versus Chris Eubank Jr. fight. Yeah, no, I think they were supposed to go towards, I think they were supposed to do the back of January towards, or the first or the second week of February. Then it got moved because Liam Smith versus Chris Eubank Jr. ended up being a pay-per-view in January, and they didn't want to do 2 pay-per-view events close to each other. Now that was Sky's choice to do that as a pay-per-view event. So yes, I can see how that happened. Then I think they tried to move it to March, and ultimately from the March date, they wanted to move it, I think, to April, and then there was, and then Josh said, no, can't do that, that's too far out, whatever. Then they settled on March, and then from March, he ultimately got injured, earlier on this month with a plantar fascia injury to his foot, supposedly, and was out of that. And lo and behold, now he's had a mandatory called for Teofimo Lopez for his WBO belt. Obviously he has to take care of the mandatories. He doesn't want to lose his title. And when he got injured, they put Jack Catterall into a fight, saying, and he said, ultimately, look, I can't, what if he gets injured now? You're going to have me on the sidelines waiting for him to come through this fight. Anything could happen. So now he's got his own fight and you haven't just rescheduled it. I need to take a fight. I need to take my fight, and my mandatory is due, so I'm going to fulfill that. So on the purpose of Jack Catterall taking a fight in the interim, I half understand what you're saying, because yes, we don't know what could have happened during that fight, but you're the one that got injured, not him. So your same contract could have still been in play with just him taking the tune-up. If he then gets injured, then you're free. And at that point of you being free, you could have said, all right, he can take this tune-up. I'll be ready by this date. This is when our next fight has to happen. If anything happens to him, I want a backup opponent on standby for me to get out and make sure that I can take that. Now, whether that was Tio or you go to the mandatory or whatever. Now maybe that wasn't possible just because of the mandatory situation, so I kind of get it. But what I do want to say is I do kind of understand his issue with maybe the Ben Shalom and the Sky taking long and basically acting in a way that didn't get this fight done in the way that it needed to. Because realistically, if the fight had have taken place initially back in February when it was supposed to and not have been moved, then yes, because that would have happened before the injury. So I can kind of see that, how it was constantly, you know, there was a constant movement by Sky and Ben Shalom and whatnot. But your actions in this whole time also weren't perfect. I mean, let's be real. As an undisputed champion, you know that you've got obligations. I'm sure that your wife would have understood that you can't have this wedding right now, or you have the ceremony, do the ceremony, and then you do, you know, you go and you have the actual proper reception and the honeymoon and everything. Do that later on. If it was just about getting married, you could have just done the piece of paper and then had everything else afterwards, a year out, put it a year out, and just taking care of these other steps. So now you're in a position where obviously it's top rank v top rank, and yes, so you kind of are still in a decent enough position. And ultimately, regardless, I mean, I guess this one's a bit easier for Bob Arum, because whoever wins and whoever loses, he's got both people, so he still keeps the belt on that side of the street. It makes total sense. Whereas this one was a lot more of a risk, and it could end up going to Sky Sports and Boxer, and then you no longer have control of that belt in the division. I get it. I do definitely hear that, you know, Ben Shalom and Sky are at fault here to a degree, but that doesn't mean that you can absolve yourself of any blame, because you handled a lot of this situation incorrectly as well. I mean, to be totally honest, if the right thing had have taken place in the first place, none of this would have happened. You just would have had to move up to 147, or you would have had to get yourself back into a mandatory position to fight for one or two of those belts again in a rematch, because realistically you lost the first fight quite clearly. So yeah, on the whole, I understand the Ben Shalom angle, and I've given my opinion on Ben Shalom in a previous video. I don't think he's really fit for purpose, if I'm totally honest, and making a very bold prediction, I don't think he's going to be around at Sky within the next 4 years. If I'm, what year are we in? 2023? By 2027, I can't see him being there. You lot can timestamp this video, keep this video in the vault just in case, and then, you know, 3-4 years from now, whatever happens, we can come back to it and you can see if I'm right, see if I'm wrong. But that doesn't absolve Josh Taylor from his faults in this whole situation. The only decent thing is, as I said in the last video, now you got the two guys, Teofimo and Josh Taylor, who are both ducking other people, fighting each other, and we will see, you know, you get the king of the ducks, and then we'll see what they do afterwards. And at least Jack Catterall is still pushing for that Regis Prograis fight, so hey, more power to him on that one, because that's not a fight I favor him in at all. I still think Regis should have probably signed to Matchroom, or at least Eddie should have looked at that, because he currently has no one for his 140 stable to fight, especially if Regis ends up doing anything with Sky and Boxer. But mandatory positions, it looks like, is the call of action for all of them guys moving forward. Alright peeps, thanks for watching. You know, I'm going to try and keep the consistency up with the videos throughout the week, so there will be more to come. But for right now, thank you very much for watching, and that is the Hardcore Casual out.